Alright. Pull this in here a little bit. And we'll wait for some folks to show up and get this last bit. Yes, sir. We did it. It's running. I'm going to go ahead and switch to this one just because it's too nice to watch this thing print. Oh, cannot tell you guys how much more of a better mood I'm in right now. It is amazing, but it was an extremely long day today. So it's now, oh, what time is it? It's like midnight? 11:30 at night. I spent most of today working on this printer, almost the entire day. And trust me, my wife made it very clear to me that I was doing that. That being aside, I found out a lot of problems on what was going on here. So I'm going to run down here on what things I ran into. And this is just going to be a short stream, like half hour tops. But then I'll do some Q&A at the end if anybody has any questions on this. So, hey, we got snow in Pennsylvania. Good deal. I'm from Pittsburgh, so I'm glad to see that there's snow back home. I don't get any snow here, so it sucks. Anyways, yeah, so kind of recapping a little bit as I clean up because I have tools everywhere. Because, again, I was working on this all day long. Now, when I last left, I was having issues with the firmware and the motors. The firmware was not the problem. It was the wiring on the motors. And I thought that I tested every configuration possible to figure out what would work. That was a lie. I did not try out every single possibility. What I had to do is I got the white page out for these G-Tech motors that I'm using. And I found that I still had some wires flipped around. So the center two wires on the motor needed to be flipped in order to realign the coils again. Because I did the whole wire test. I think I have my little test piece of wire here somewhere that I was using to test the coils. And that's how I was able to figure out I actually had them wired wrong. As soon as I made that change, they started working. So it was like, great. Now I have working motors. The extruder, what needed to be I needed to do that and fix and flip the entire connector because it was running backwards. I guess just because of the configuration that I have it in. On the other printers, it was facing the other way. So it was running backwards. Either way, that was a very easy fix. And that was nothing, really too hard to write home about. Some other issues I ran into today was I actually had on the original Bondtech gear, I had stripped out the little Allen head that was in there, and it wasn't perfectly lined up inside the extruder. So I had to remove this, and thankfully I had already ordered another Bondtech set so that I could get the springs out of it for the extruder. So because I did that, I was able to get past that point. This is just a box that I need. Let me know if this has gotten any better before I continue on my monologue here. Reconnecting, right? I'm not sure what's going on here. Buffer even at 240, huh? Drop frames. Okay, let me close a little bit. It could be I just using too much RAM. That's why it's dropping frames right now. Sorry, 1 second here. Performance. Yeah, it was kind of maxing out that for it. Better? Okay. All right. I closed a few, one of my Chrome windows using too much RAM. Somebody said, where's the fan? It's going to be right there once it gets here. I don't have it here yet. So I'll show you, since we're talking about it. The very first print I did was a benchy boat. As you can see, a little stringy, and super duper screwed up in the front here, and that's purely because there's no part cooling fan. There's nothing I can do about that. Again, it's on its way, but I didn't have that. Otherwise, it was alright. This filament, this was, I forget the brand of this. It was giving me a little bit of issues anyways, so I tried some other ones here. I tried just doing the Prusa logo, and it did under extrude under there a little bit. So then I went ahead and pulled out a Toner Plastics Pearl PLA, and this one did much, much better. This is an AO Robotics filament. So I am still having one issue. So let's dial back before I go into what the current issue is with this. So Pauline helped me out a lot. Talked to her really late last night. Talked to her again this morning. Was able to change up a setting because it looks for, when it's searching these probe points, it's looking for a certain level or something like that. Like it sees the points, but it wasn't meeting a threshold in the Prusa firmware. She edited the firmware and took it from like 68 to 58. It's an arbitrary number because I don't actually know what it means, but she knew what it meant. And that is how I was able to get this calibrated and configured. So that was pretty sweet. And I am getting this very strange line here in the print, and I don't know what that's from. It's in both parts, so I can kind of show you what that looks like. But let's see. So I talked about the part cooling fan is on order. I talked about the firmware, getting that all set up, getting the motors set up. Oh, the LCD this LCD did die on me last night, so I did obviously replace the LCD. They do have the extended like knobs on the top of them, so the knob sticks like way out from it, unlike the Prusa has like that nice low profile one. Meh, it's alright. So is it printing as good as the real one? No. The nice thing about getting an original Prusa is it is tuned to the nth degree, and they know exactly what it's going to be like when it comes to you, whether it's a kit or pre-built. Pre-built even more so, but a kit, they pretty much know how it's going to be. So building it was not a big problem once I had everything corrected. So once I had a frame that had tapped tapped holes, that went together super quick and easy, just like the original did. Having all the printed parts, again, already printed ahead of time, super easy. I did change out the extruders. You see here it's partly black and has some red on there as well. I did change that out by recommendations of a lot of people saying that it has to be black for the sensor to see the filament. It senses the filament perfectly. No issues whatsoever sensing filament, so that's really good. Any color I'd put in there so far, I'd done wood filament, 2 white filaments, and this blue filament. I'm doing this blue, it's a little easier to see on camera. Could you put a long z-axis? Richard, yes you could if you went in and changed the firmware for it to look for a longer z, because the whole thing about the Prusa machine is that it has this self-diagnostics built into Marlin for it, and the board can hold a gigantic Marlin, and it has a lot of extras in there. So when you actually set this up, it measures your X, it measures your Y, and it measures your Z to ensure it can go all the directions to what the firmware says it should be. So if you were just to edit that, you'd be good to go, and then you would just download every new version that they put out, and then you just have to put your changes back into it. So yes, it could be done. The easiest thing to do that would be through the Bear upgrade, which is using a what's that, a 3030 frame for the entire printer versus the cut 6mm aluminum frames that they use, the milled aluminum. Let's see, where was I at here? We did talk about, yeah, so getting through all those hurdles was a little bit time consuming and daunting today. I could not for the life of me compile my own firmware for this to work. There's something in there missing that I thought I changed. I kept getting the gobbledygook on the screen that I got last night, but the firmware that I got from Pauline worked out just fine, so that was good to see. No, I think it's 3030 in the Bear. To be honest, I really think it is 3030. It's definitely not 2040 because it's square. 2040 is rectangular. Let's see here. Yeah, this is giving me this super odd line. I don't know if I can show you guys right here. You can't see that. Let's let it finish this current piece it's on right now, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. I don't know if that's the print file because it's only the first time I'm printing this, or if it is something jacked up in the printer. It's really hard to tell. Hey Gunner. Yeah, I just wanted kind of to talk about, you know, what came of all this. So it was really, again, once I finally got everything going, it really wasn't all that bad. It's just going to be kind of a pain when I go to add the part cooling fan. I'll have to take this back plate off in order to do it. Oh, that was it. So in the extruder, the idler for the half the Bondtech came loose, and the shaft that it came with is a little shorter than what the original came with. So I ended up putting just a dab of super glue on either side of it just to kind of hold it in place so the bearing could spin freely. It actually had shifted to one side, and then the bearing started to fall off. But again, it was a very easy fix to do. But I did have to take apart the entire extruder again today and take the motor off. Well, I had to take the motor off anyways to fix the gear. But while I had that off, I noticed the idler gear in there needed fixed, so I went ahead and fixed that, and that only took about half an hour to do because it's about 10 bolts to get this apart enough that I could work on it, and there is still enough give here in the back for a problem. Now I haven't tested any of the Mark III bonuses that come with all the hardware and the software tuning that this machine has, except for the filament sensor. I have tried that. It does work. I have not tried the the shift restore. Like if you were to knock this and it go, then that would be a problem. But I mean, obviously sensorless homing works just fine, as it should with the 2130s. And I have not tried power resume either. So that is something I will try eventually. I actually would like this print to kind of finish and see why it's having these low spots in the print. I don't really know why, but someone here might know what's going on. Yeah, that back plate I think is the only thing I need to loosen up on in order to get that new one. Belt alignment looks a little funky, not sure. Yes, you mean the belt alignment from before? I was able to solve that by getting a screw. So the problem with the PLA printed parts is they are extremely stiff versus the PETG printed parts that come with the original i3 Mark III kit. So what I had to do was, I got a flathead screwdriver and basically just kind of pushed as hard as I could at the belt to wedge it into the grooves that hold the belt there. By doing that, that dramatically straightened out both belts. So I was able to fix that easily, but it took a little bit of finicking to go around. Again, I had the time because I wasn't on a live stream. I just did this did that part on Friday, so that was nice to get that aligned perfect. So now the X and Y belts are perfectly aligned the way they should be. Thank you for reminding me about that. Pack fan, it was if you rewind the video a little bit, you'll hear it, but real quick, I'll just say it did have to do a little bit with the wiring on the motors was not correct. I was switching the outer two pairs. I should have only switched the middle pair in order to realign the coils on these ones. It was automatically working with the integrated Z-shaft motors, but it was not working with the G-Tech motors that I had from my old printer, which is what I'm using on this. So that is fine. it would have figured out. There's a couple other firmware things I did, but I talked about it earlier. And Pauline was a excellent source of information. Yeah, so oh, yeah, you see that space FPV? You see that line that it has in there? I guess, I don't know why the G code is closer right here during the same line, but not. I'm wondering if it's the what's it called? I wonder if it's the actual probing that it's saying that the bed is lower there than not. So that's, again, I need to do just like a big old square and see if these lines are persistent in it or not, because I really don't know. It wobbles just because of the way that this is turning. I've seen that in all my other printers, and actually the original one does it too. So I might end up, I do think I'm going to switch out these belts for a higher quality belt. These are like this amazingly cheap belts that I could find. I might try and get something a little more higher quality if I can find something, and go with that. I think that will definitely be something worthwhile to have, is a higher quality belt. But I've used it on a lot of other machines. They haven't done me wrong, so might be say la vie, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, but this line in the print, that is super annoying. So I'm gonna try and see what happens. But it does, even after it does the auto bed leveling every time, it still puts that in there. Excuse me. I do have a file. I did print a some replacement parts for my wife's diaper bag, which was the this bottom cardboard piece that was in the bottom of it, covered by a piece of fabric. This is just seen lots and lots of spilled drinks and rainy days and everything, and it's just trash. So I reprinted this in PLA and glued it together. I might see if I can fit that on this bed and print one big piece, nice big square, to see how that goes. I was also trying other filaments just to make sure it wasn't anything filament related, but again, it's something to kind of mess with. I have heard that they are making changes to the firmware to have more leveling points, but I have not seen anything for that, and my printer has not done it yet, my original i3 Mark III. So I'm not following that closely, but hopefully I will hear about it sooner and I can kind of play with it. So the bed seems, I mean, so this piece of spring steel is fine, and their bed looked okay. So again, I'll get out, maybe I do have a T-square and a ruler that I can put across it and see. It's a very small point, so I mean, it doesn't feel any different anywhere on the bed, at least to my hand. So kind of have to see. I mean, it is super duper hot too. Kind of shouldn't be putting my hand on there. What speed am I printing at? I have no idea. The default 0.2 millimeter generic PLA settings in Prusa Slicer Edition. Slicer Prusa Edition, sorry. Because I'm using the MK, just whatever settings are in there for my original Mark III, I'm using it here for the Clone Mark III. And again, doing the tests, it was just fine. I did have a little bit of issue again with this benchy, but still have to do a little bit of tuning. It's definitely not as plug and play as my original Mark III was. Excuse me. Sadly, it's not that much. Yeah, I need to delete that Maker Geeks leak because I really don't recommend anybody buy their stuff anymore. The main slicer for this printer is Prusa Prusa Edition. My goodness. My main slicer that I use for every other printer here in my arsenal is Simplify 3D. Trolling, what's up, brother? So yeah, I mean it was an adventure. I also do think I need to calibrate the extruder a little bit because I am seeing, even in this first layer, a little bit of under extrusion. So one thing that Pauline said, that the clone Bondtech gears might not be exactly the same as original Bondtech gears, but the clones are $10. Original Bondtech gears alone are $50. So again, there's that cost saving with doing a clone using cloned parts. You're definitely saving money, but you're creating a little bit more headaches, most likely. Again, I'm not using any of the Prusa motors. I am using an original E3D hot end now, but I was using clone hot end. It just was not working out well. So there are a few things of not using original parts. You're going to see issues, and that's one of the issues. Yeah, it's not Slick 3R Gunner, it's Slicer. They just did the 3 to be fancy, and Tom reads it literally, which cracks me up. But yeah, I don't do that. Yeah, the original Bondtech gears are $50. They are not cheap, and I honestly thought about buying them. But when I went onto AliExpress and saw several companies with clone Bondtech gears for $10, I'm like, no brainer. So, let's see what else we have here. So I think the original motors made the overall process more straightforward. I mean, aside from the motors being labeled, and they obviously have, the wires are already to the exact length they need to be. I had to use the jumpers that I had, so I had to cut those down and solder them back together in order to make them shorter, because I wanted to use the I don't know the type of DuPont connector that it has. It has the key on it that actually fits really nice and keys into the NZ board. I wanted to use those connectors. That's why I had to strip them. If I just had to use DuPont connectors, I could just cut them and put on my own DuPont connectors at no problem. But I had to do the soldering in order to keep those connectors on there. The issue with the clone hot end was this hole right here is small and was not exactly lining up with where the filament was going down and in. So it actually was just going down and just curling up. And I was like, why is there no filament coming out? Like, it should have came out like an hour ago. But I don't know where I threw it in the trash, I guess, the little bit from that. So that was definitely not cool when that happened. So again, I had the original, the legit E3D V6 that I wanted to try out. But even with non-Prusa motors, this thing is absolutely silent. I mean, it is super duper quiet, which is really, really nice to see. Nice to hear, I should say. I have not put this into silent mode. This is normal mode. You're going to hear it kick up here in a second once it finishes the first layer. It does get a little bit louder on the second layer just because it speeds up, but it's still super duper quiet. It's like Mini for $120. Nice. That's a good price. Chipped, a how-to video on what? I mean, I just did, this is the 4th video in this series now of me building this, so I don't know how much more how-to you want. Max, I don't know what upgrade you're referring to. I don't know why you would put a Bondtech extruder on this when I'm using Bondtech gears with a normal extruder. I don't really see the need. It works great on my original, so I don't see the reason to do that upgrade there. No, I honestly really like the original build of the Mark III. I don't know if I would want to change anything, to be honest. I've never used an original Bondtech extruder. I'm only using Bondtech gears. So here's where it starts really definitely getting a little bit louder, because now I think the infill for solid layers is 120 millimeters a second or 200 millimeters a second. It's fast. So it chips right through pretty quickly. Do I suggest an original hot end? The original hot end was 30 bucks. I mean, you really can't go wrong with that. I mean, it's like 50 or 60, I think, if you add in the 24-volt heater and the thermistor and the fan. Like this one, it didn't even come with a fan because I didn't want that. I got the most bare-boned original E3D, which is the heatsink, the throat, the heater block, and the nozzle. That's it. Yeah, that was it. So as bare bone as you can get, aside from parting it yourself, it was good. And now, I mean, it's an all metal hot end, so all I have to do is throw on a micro Swiss nozzle, and I can do high temp stuff on this end. I probably won't, just because it's PLA. I don't want that to deform, even though the part cooling on it is quite significant. To keep all that really cool, so I'm not too worried about that. This fan is pretty awesome. It moves a ton of air. And right back here, if you guys see this fan right here, this one right here, I have that hooked up to the part cooling outlet just because I need it to register there's a fan there, but I don't have another 5-volt fan for the thing yet. That's 50 bucks for the whole kit and caboodle. Again, you save yourself some money if you don't get the heater and the thermistor for it, or the fan. So you can save almost 20 bucks by not getting that stuff. If you need it, it's fine, but I mean, I got the 24-volt heater on AliExpress for, I don't know, $3, and the thermistor was free because I had it here. I have at least 30 thermistors sitting around here. I only had to buy the heater cartridge because it's 24 volts. I have no 24 volt. I have 3 24 volt printers now, but I don't have any spare parts for that because all my older printers are all 12 volt, and I have a lot of spare parts for those, but not for a 24 volt system. Yeah, I definitely need to do a little bit more tuning on the hot end. I did do a PID tuning on it, but I need to do an extrusion setting on it just to kind of help it a little bit. Overall thoughts? Honestly, it was a pain to get to this point. It really was. Simply because the whole fiasco with the frame, that really ticked me off. I can say that. And then just the issues with using, you know, old recycled motors. Again, I was using a lot of recycled parts for this, and that's definitely not going to be the option for a lot of people because they're not going to have the tools. Like, I had to cut down smooth rods. If anyone here has ever cut down a hardened steel smooth rod, you know it's hard as heck. I burned up 1 cutting disc on my Dremel per rod. So I used 4 cutting discs just to cut these things. So that was like $5 in cutting discs right there, because these things are really, really hard to cut. And you got to make sure everything is perfect, because again, the firmware measures everything, and if it doesn't measure perfectly, the firmware errors out. Because there is no room for error as far as I know. So, you know, there is a little bit of, you know, meh with it. But it was a lot of work. Was it rewarding work? Was it fun? Absolutely. Is it for everyone? Not at all. Because if you're not comfortable with trying to figure things out and trying to think on the fly with a lot of this, you're not going to have a good day building this at all. Yeah, don't need any smoke alarms, it's fine. Yeah, it repeated the low spots on the second layer. Yeah, it definitely repeated them. And it's, yeah, I mean, I can feel the Z moving, The Z motors are definitely moving. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. You guys have seen it printing now. So, I mean, it grips. The one thing I did talk to Pauline about is I thought it was gripping the same, but after kind of playing with my original Mark III and this one, it definitely does not grip as much. Like, I can definitely feel a little bit of a difference. This is easier to pull off. Is it going to come off during a print? Unless your extruder crashes into it, most likely not. But definitely the magnets are a little bit subpar in comparison to the original bed. I mean, this is an original. This is a clone bed of the Mark III bed. Come on. So if I can, you can definitely see that low spot in there. So that's kind of the one thing. Oh, this was just a box. I needed to print a little box for a project that I'm working on. So I just figured, yeah, might as well print it on this because it doesn't need any cooling just because it's a simple box. Now, I mean, when I feel the bed, it feels fine. Let me pull out the square real quick. I mean, it doesn't look like there's any high spots anywhere. I need to do some light on one side to see, help trying to show it through there. Where's the flashlight app? I mean, there's a little bit of sag here in the front and a little bit in the back, maybe, but otherwise, it doesn't seem to be too bad. And I mean, I know that this is okay. I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. So let me, I'll use the PEI sheet here. This is the original PEI sheet. And we'll do a first layer calibration on this real quick and see if that persists or not. Calibration, first layer cal, yep. Alright. Let's let that heat up and get ready for that. Yeah, I could put washers there, yep. Yeah, so I just put on a different bed on there. Again, this is the PEI coated original Prusa plate. So we'll see how that one does. I also have the Gecko Tech sheet. So I do have here the clone sheet, the clone piece of spring steel. Dropping stuff everywhere. This is the clone spring steel sheet. And it is not springy at all. I've actually bent it quite a bit because I just tried doing a quick bend test on. I was like, ew, that was not, that was no bueno. But I do have the Gecko Tech sheet here, and I have the, that's a piece of spring steel from Printed Solid. And then here I have the Build Tack spring steel sheet that has a piece of Build Tack on one side and a piece of Build Tack PEI on the other side. I print on that one quite a bit. Okay, I don't care about that. It would be weird if it's the plate, because this plate doesn't give me that issue on the original. But, you know, it's kind of doing it on here. So I got to come around to the front so I can see this, and because I know I'm going to have to adjust this layer height. Let's see, how's that looking? A little far away. Just kind of watching to see how it goes across. If I notice any little hiccups in the bed or anything and the way it moves. Oh, I see it. I see the problem. Oh, goodness gracious me. I am such an idiot. Hang on. So, I put, I don't know if you guys will be able to see this here. So I put these zip ties on to hold the, cables for the LCD. Well, the U-bolts that hold the bearings on were hitting those, and the bed was jumping up because of that. That's why there's two, because there's two bearings on that side. Ah, man, I'm an idiot. So now if I go to restart this print, that won't happen again. So print and box. And we'll just leave it on. Oh, I gotta clean this real quick. Shoot. If you guys, if you have an MK3, if you've read anything, using like a window cleaner works amazing on PEI. It really does. Now you guys can watch the full process. Yeah, so I kind of feel a little dumb now that it wasn't any of that. So, riddle me this. I guess I'll have to Google it, but I don't know how to even to enable the 7x7 grid instead of the 3x3 grid. Because I wouldn't mind testing that out on my original before I do it on this. That is just too funny that I did not even think that was the problem. I just wanted those cable, the LCD cables, to stay up out of the way. Derp, derp, derp. That very much might have been. I bet you I could. Maybe I'll try that. I will try throwing on the original firmware. Again, it was just having problems seeing the points. And maybe it was because the bearing was hitting that zip tie and giving it such variation. Could be. I don't know though. But it is definitely something that I will need to figure out. But it's just too funny that that's what that was. Oh, good gravy. Oh, let's see. Alternative firmware. Then there's a bit of start G code. It tells you so 7. Oh, okay. It's not anything in production yet. Alright, I'm going to wait then, because as you guys know, after me messing with firmware for 2 days, I am not a firmware person. I can muck my way through it most times, like with regular old Marlin, but this alternative Marlin that Prusa's using is a little bit finicky, so it's a little tough for me to kind of figure out that stuff. What else? I'll take a few more questions, and then I'm going to call it. If you do want to build one of these, I'll say if you're watching this video later, down in the video description there is a link to a Google document that has every single piece that you need to buy in order to do this. I did cheat a few different ways now, because from when I originally started building this to now, there are a few companies on AliExpress that actually have full hardware kits for the printer. Hardware being nuts and bolts and washers. So you can just buy that whole kit for 20 bucks instead of parting out all your things. I will say that's cheaper because I bought more than what I needed, and it cost me about $30 to buy all the nuts and bolts that I needed to make this happen, and washers. So you do save a little money, but you only are buying what you get. You're not buying anything extra. So just kind of keep that in mind. And I sliced my finger somehow. Whenever you're buying those parts, if you want to go that route, you can. But if you want to source them out yourself, you can as well. Yeah, it'll get eventually in there. Looks better than a retail bought printer. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. It was, I mean, the printed parts did come off of two very highly tuned printers, which is the i3 Mark III original, printed some of these parts, and my G-Tech A10 printed a bunch of these parts as well. So both of those printers are super tuned. That's why they probably also came out really well. It helps having really, really good machines printing to get really, really nice parts. So that does help a lot. Gunner, true. So I bought mine. I forget where I said I bought mine. The aircraft website is where I bought all my parts originally. Again, it was about 30 bucks, but I have a lot of leftover because you can only buy in increments. Most things were only in 25 or 50s. So if I only needed 16 M5s, I bought 20. So I'm paying for 25 instead of only the 16 that I need. If I had a store that I could go and hunt and peck from, then yes, but I don't have that option. So buying online, that's what I had to do, and that's what probably a lot of other people have to do as well. There's no line in there. It looks fantastic now. All the parts are in PLA. The only PETG part is the spool holder up here, because I printed it in PLA, which is right down here. It fell. I printed it in PLA, but I'll show you right here. It cracked down here at the bottom. This bottom piece here cracked when I went to stick it on to the frame. And yeah, so now it's loose. So the PLA doesn't give enough. It looks beautiful. Like, it's a really nice color for a freaking spool holder, and I'm so angry that it broke. But PLA doesn't have any give to it, where the PETG does, to be able to snap on and hug the frame. I have debated on going back. I printed this in black PLA just to get the black in there. I might go back and replace just the main body and the cover for the extruder in PETG, just for a little bit higher heat resistance. But the fan on here cools well enough, and there's a boot on the silicone boot on the hot end. The heat is pretty contained. I'm not really worried about it morphing much of the PLA parts, because I have PLA hot ends on a lot of other machines with no problem whatsoever. So I'm going to run PLA for a while, see how it is. I did just order some more PETG. I ran out of black, so I ordered some more Ziltech black PETG in order to, if I decide to print this, I'll have the filament to do it, because I want to do it in black. So Dimple, to answer your question, you asked, in your opinion, is it worth it to build my own clone, or in comparison to buying it off the shelf? So yeah, Yeah, I'm going to agree with what Gunnar just said right there. So if you're just buying your, obviously you have to have another printer or two. You have to have at least one other printer in order to make this printer. Obviously, unless you're going to have someone else print the parts for you. But this is a second printer thing. Comparing it to the Mark III, so I'm just going to go, I can't compare quality over time because I've only had the Mark III for 4 or 5 months now, and I've had this now for a day printing, and I have only printed 3 complete things off of it. Setting up the original was amazingly easy because everything was pre-configured. Everything was good to go. There were no problems whatsoever with that machine. Like, everything just worked first time for me. There's a lot of problems on the forums, but for me, it just worked. This took tinkering. This took time. This took a lot more effort. Where I put this together in 4 hours, this took me probably 10 hours to put together in total, and another probably 5 hours just in troubleshooting in order to get to this point right here. So yeah, if you want to tinker, if you have another printer, by all means, I fully think that this is a fun project to do. It's completely open source printer, which is great. So find someone to, if you can find somebody to make the frame for you locally, you'll save a crap ton of money because the frame alone is $100. I think I've seen them as low as $90, but I am now 2 frames deep into this, so I am now $100 over my original budget for this machine just because I had to buy 2 frames. That sucks, but you know, that's life. Because again, I didn't know the other frame wasn't tapped, and I've messaged the seller on eBay, but he no longer sells them and he doesn't care anymore. So I am keeping that other frame and potentially building another one with M4 hardware because I can tap those holes for an M4 to fit, and that will work. So TBD on that one. I hope that was a long-winded one for you. I mean, the extruder motor on this is warm, but it's definitely not hot, and by any stretch of the imagination. It's definitely warm, but not warm enough to deform PLA. I can say that. It's not that I think. Oh, that'd be pretty cool under this. I mean, the P3 steel frame in this, honestly, there's not big of a difference. Not gonna lie, I like the Mark III frame. I think it is far better, far superior from the M2, from the MK2. A lot better. So there is that. Yeah, no lines. Yeah, that's good now. And a bear, you know, that is, again, that's kind of something that I'm kind of considering. I mean, depending on, this was a lot of out of pocket for this machine here. So, you know, it ended up being like about what, $450 out of pocket for this machine. If people use the affiliate links and buy things, and it then pays for this machine, and if I start getting more than what I got back for it, I could do another one of these. I could do a Bear machine straight out of the get-go. Order all the parts again, but order the Bear frame instead, and then build the machine and kind of do a video on that. This was kind of my first venture into paying for a completely DIY printer and seeing what the reception is to the community. So that's what I have to say about that. Money doesn't grow on trees, and I'm hoping that people found this interesting and that they will use the affiliate links and purchase these things, and I get, you know, the pennies on the dollar, if that, and can make the money back for this machine, and then I can build another one. So, or if people become patrons, or people donate, all that kind of jazz. But I mean, I'm not going to lie to say that YouTube is not great, but this was an amazingly fun project. Even though I definitely got a few more gray hairs this weekend because of it. It is not a full Feistek kit. A lot of parts came from Feistek on AliExpress, but the whole kit was not. I did link a lot of their parts in the instructional just because They did not have these parts when I ordered a lot of these parts a year ago. Now they have a great big store dedicated to MK3 parts. It's fantastic, and the parts that I have gotten from them are quality. So I definitely would recommend them, and I think they're the only ones at AliExpress with the board. That's another thing to kind of think about it. Would I change anything in the BOM? I mean, again, the BOM is not identical to buying the original, because you're buying this fan here is on DigiKey. It's quiet. It moves a crap ton of air. It really does. Now I see why so many people in the Prusa Facebook group recommend changing the Noctua fan out for this. And I might actually use this other fan I have and swap out the Noctua fan on my original, just because it moves a lot more air, slightly louder, but for the cooling benefit of a slightly louder fan, it's fine. Again, be aware of the motors you buy on how they're wired, because I didn't know that. I think I've made all the... I'm going to go through the Google document one more time just to make sure that these extra cables that I bought are annotated in there. And I did change the fans in there because, again, I had the wrong fans originally linked. I bought 24-volt fans by mistake, not knowing that the NZ uses 5-volt fans. So that was one of my original mistakes for that. I don't know if I would change much else. I ended up going with socket cap screws on the front of the frame because the cheapo button heads that I bought ended up stripping out on me. So I already had bought a ton of button head socket cap ones, and those are much more secured in there. So that was a bonus. I did change to that. Not UA. Yeah, TPU prints well in my original. So I haven't tried TPU on this particular printer yet, but I have no reason to see why it wouldn't work. It's a direct drive printer, which is fantastic for flexible filaments. So there's a little bit of inconsistency in there. Again, I think it's under extruding a little bit. So again, I just need to do a little bit more fine tuning on this machine just to get it to be perfect. Again, it is a tinkering machine where the original was kind of build it and start printing. I got the hardware from, God, what was that? Aviation. I don't have the stickers anymore. I said it in the earlier streams. I think the original build one, I talked about it. That was a 4.5 or 5 hour stream, I think, or the second one I talked about it. The second part 2 I talked about it. But anyway, I think it was an aviation something like Mr. Metric. People buy Mr. Metric 2 all the time. McMaster Car is a good source if they have the things you want. I bought a lot of things from McMaster Car for other projects that I've done at my house. I mean, it really doesn't matter as long as you get the parts you want. The parts you need, I should say, not what you want. Is the extruder melting? No. I mean, it's melting plastic. That's what you mean. I'm going to take like 2 more questions, and we're going to call it there. That'll be an hour, and I'm getting tired. It's been a super long, super crazy day. I think I need to get some sleep. No, you're fine, Gunner. I'm all for, especially like that kind of stuff. I'm all for that. Oh yeah, sorry, Xenolace. Yeah, I was meant to tell you. Yeah, it's everything's linked in there. So when I think about changing one of my CR10s to direct drive, I kind of thought about it. I don't know if I want to do any more work on the CR10s because they work so well right now. The CR10S is my abrasive, high temp, and PETG machine. Everything that fits one of those three categories goes onto that machine to print. It's set up for that. It sticks to PEI very well. So that's what I use that machine mainly for. The other one honestly has not gotten much love because the Tivo Tornado has been working so well lately. I've been using that for all large PLA prints, and I've gone away from the CR10, which is a shame because that one has the, I mean, that one's kitted out quite a bit. I mean, it's got the Easy ABL on it. It's got the upgraded extruder fans on it. It has the Ultra Base on it, which makes that really nice and easy. I mean, it's kind of to the point that I don't need. So right now I have 5 large form factor printers. 6 large form factor printers. I don't need 6. So I kind of need to decide on what I'm going to do. I really want to get working on the AlphaWise U10 again and get that working with a volcano nozzle, but I don't know if that's going to end up happening or not, just because that printer is becoming such a pain in the butt. More tinkering is what I need, and I don't really have the time for it. Oh, I'm getting tired. Holy cow. What do I think of this build versus the Hypercube? I think that they are very different machines, and I don't want to say it's apples to oranges, but the Hypercube is super DIY. Like, I mean, even though I followed the guide, Tech2C's guide on mine, and I use mostly all of his parts for it, it required a lot more finicking than this did. I can say that because the frame was pretty much cut and dry. That I had to cut my own frame. I mean, that was like, it's almost apples and oranges because that is a super DIY printer, as this is more kit based. So if that makes any sense to you. No problem, Dimple. So Xenolace, the other kind of thing, but yeah, I mean, honestly, $450 for a super solid designed machine. You definitely can go more expensive. Absolutely can go more expensive, simply because if you went with original Bondtech gears, you're going to add on $40 onto that. If you were to go with the Prusa motors, which people have recommended, the Prusa motors alone are $150. That's, and I think I linked a kit on AliExpress, I think for $50 for 5 motors. You add another $100, so you're up to $600 now. The kit from Prusa is only $800. So by only upping 2 things to more legitimate ones, you're getting really close to the actual price of the original kit. That's pricey. And the power supply, the Meanwhile power supply they're using is $100. The one I'm using is $60. So I did get a better power supply. I did not get as good as one as them, but it is a Meanwhile. I'm just able to get it cheaper than buying it directly from Prusa, which he has a little bit more of a markup on his products than I would like, but I was able to get it a little bit for $60 still, or 80, maybe it was 80, I don't know. But that was a heavy hitting price. Excuse me. Oh man. And the board, that was the other thing. The NZ board that I'm using, the Rambo board, the knockoff, the clone, is $75. The original was $120. So I'm saving $45 there as well. So now you're up to $650, almost $700, or only $100 cheaper than the original kit. And his hardware is good, like it's good quality hardware. I'm using Chinese bolts that may or may not strip out on you. So that's another thing you have to be aware of when you buy things. So yeah. Yesterday's stream, actually part 2 and part 3 I actually forgot to upload, so they're in there. I just need to publish them, so I will do that before I go to bed tonight, Pac fan. Sorry about that. Lead times are not that bad anymore. So Gunner, I honestly don't know if you could do $100 cheaper if you buy all original parts, to be honest. I really don't think you can. Because it's a pretty tight, you know. Yeah. Like I said, this definitely did cost me less than that if you subtract the second frame I had to buy, just because I didn't have to spend like the $20 or $30 on smooth rods. I didn't have to spend $50 on motors. I had all my motors except for the integrated Z ones. I did buy those ones. But yeah, I mean, you get the point there though. So yeah, I would like to do another super DIY build, kind of like the Hypercube. I need to finish Hypercube, so now that this is done, once I get this fully tuned, I'm going to do part 6 on the Hypercube. A lot of people asked about that. And I am probably going to do a DIY, again, depending on how this is received and how it ends up going, people viewing it, and again, you know, people using fill links, things like that. If it ends up being a success, I will do a clone MMU 2.0 build for this as well. My original one shipped. It should be here in the next 1 to 2 weeks. And I will do a live build and install on my Mark III for that. Again, I might do a clone one for this one as well. I have the filament to print, so I can have in the red again. I just have to decide whether I'm going to do that or not. What's going on with the FT? Okay, we got to finish up here because I'm going to get to bed here. So, FT5, I have to do the rebuild on that with all of the aluminum parts. So I have all the parts here. I just had several other projects that I was doing. I'm now going to go ahead and get back into that, I think, soon as well. Maybe in the next few weeks. My mom is here visiting for the next couple weeks, so it might not be while she's here. I haven't decided yet, but that is something that I do need to do in the near future and get that working again, because that's my ABS machine, because it's fully enclosed. Yeah, the MMU 2.0 took 6, 7, 8 months to finally ship to me. I bought it in July. It just shipped in January, so it shipped a month late. It was supposed to ship in December. I had to send them a message and request them to ship it. Probably because I'm giving them bad PR on Twitter. So we'll see how that ends up going. All right, so I'm going to be done with the questions here. I'm going to do a couple plugs here and close out this stream. So I want to thank everybody for watching. This has been a rocky road to get this thing up and running, but I'm kind of glad I did. A few things still need to be changed in it, so there will be a part 5 video to come out eventually. That will not be in the near future. That's going to be once I get it tuned and I figure out what I'm doing about the belts and kind of get a few more things done and do another one, like kind of recap video, kind of like this one, to get that done. If you guys want to purchase and build this yourself, there is a Google link for a Google document down below. It has part listings for everything, almost everything. There's an affiliate link. So if you use those, I greatly appreciate it, because that money, a little slice what you buy with the links, ends up coming back here to help me. You can also use any of my affiliate links down in the description for other vendors. I have coupon codes for a ton of vendors. If you want to buy the Protopasta filament, so thanks to Protopasta for sending me the filament. If you want to buy it, there's a link to buy that down below. Ziltech has a coupon, Robotics has a coupon. There's several filament coupons down there, so you want to check those out. And again, all that money kind of can help me build more of these machines. If you guys want to help me on a more scheduled basis, you become a patron. A lot of patron money actually had bought me my Mark III, which was great. Kind of helped me do more content with that, and it really helps out to have that scheduled income come in, that I know I can purchase upgrades and work on things for you know, other printers and whatnot. So that'll really helps out. And obviously, like the streams, like any of the videos you watch that I do, the more likes, the more I know people actually like viewing that content, and I can make more of those kinds of videos. And yeah, so I'm tired. It's been an awesome trip. I thank you everybody for helping me out, and I'll see you guys in the next stream.